While the movie is complex, nihilistic, and beautiful, it does suffer from being campy at times, as well as having bad acting, poor moments, lack of tension, bad music, and slow pacing issues. Regardless of the movie's issues, these problems really aren't Zack Snyder's fault. Watchmen is foolproof in terms of not being able to be made into a great movie. See, the book is 360 plus pages, and in the movie world, one page of a script should equal out to 1 minute on film. That means that in order to completely cover Watchmen's story, it would need to be well over 360 minutes. People, this basically means that there is enough content in Watchmen to make three-hour movies. Think of Watchmen as the comic book version of the Lord of the Rings books. Yeah, it's that much. But in the end, what we have is a 168-minute film, so let's look into that, since that's what we're working with here. The movie is absolutely stunning and beautiful in almost every possible way. Snyder's attention to detail for the comic is almost unreal. You can literally pick up the graphic novel and notice how true they remain to the look and color scheme of the comic. It's outstanding and something worth seeing in HD or in IMAX. The alternative New York City looks dark, gritty, surreal, and fits the mood and scheme of the movie as well as Rorschach's scenes. Cinematography is also perfectly executed, and every scene just looks fantastic, and the fight scenes can make you go wow. Character designs are also perfectly done, as they do justice for a film version of the comic book, but stay true to the comic book itself at the same time. Imagery is sharp and on point, as you could always notice subtle messages or reflections of life or modern culture by the actions of characters or things in the background. Dialogue is sharp most of the time, but the movie does have its moments where cheesy or campy things are said and for no reason whatsoever. CGI is also top-notch for the most part. The visual effects are nothing short of amazing, and Dr. Manhattan couldn't be done any better if you ask me. Some parts of the movie with the owl ship show weak moments in its use of CGI, but it's nearly perfect for the rest of the movie. Character performances also range from Oscar-worthy to shitfest. Now let's break down the superheroes of Watchmen, shall we? Jackie Earle Haley plays a demented film noir detective known as Rorschach. Haley can be considered as the main character as he narrates the story and is the best character in the movie, giving the best performance. He is essentially the Heath Ledger of this movie. I would even be so bold as to say that his performance is the first Oscar-worthy performance of the year thus far, and I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up being nominated for Best Supporting Actor. The man emotes with and without the mask and brings so much depth to the character of Rorschach. He is a psychomaniac who is relentless in his pursuit of justice, but at the same time he is a flawed and confused human being. He comes from a dark past where he was neglected and beaten, yet he's borderline out of his mind, but we feel for him and cheer for him regardless of his complex persona. He also brings so much to the table with his intensity, wit, screen presence, and humor. Dr. Manhattan is also another thought-provoking character. He basically became God after an experiment gone wrong and has lost touch with his human nature even though he himself was once one. The comedian is also another character of interest. He is the darkest member of the Watchmen and is essentially a parody of the ugly side of human nature, the monster underneath the mask, you can say. Night Owl and Ozymandias did the film justice, but were nothing to scream about, and Silk Spectre is a whole nother story. I mean, I'm sorry, but I do honestly believe that she was only around as a naked eye candy for the film, because the chick playing her could not act to save her life. She brought down interest in every scene that she was in, and her facial expressions and ability to emote are that of Keanu Reeves, and that is one of a robot. Since I mentioned one bad aspect of the movie, I guess I should go into the rest. The movie fails to connect with the audience for the most part, unlike the comic book. I mean, I was never really bored during the movie, but at the same time I wasn't excited or amazed by the ongoing plot or characters, with the exception of the third act. The only times you really gave a shit about someone were when Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan were on screen, and the rest of the time you didn't really even care about characters or their stories. The movie's music is also a bad touch for me. Now, I know that the tracks were meant to fit the mood and time of the movie and even reflect upon our time and current situations, but this only goes so far. Certain scenes fit the music well, but most of the time it just felt as if I was watching music videos from the 80s. I mean, come on, this isn't freaking VH1 Presents Best Tracks of the 80s, just a fucking Watchmen. An orchestral score would have been so much better. Dr. Manhattan has one, and his moments become all the more intriguing and beautifully haunting due to the score. VFX makeup was also pretty bad. I mean, I could see how the comedian could be 65 and look the way he looked, but the same can't be said for the original Silk Spectre. She still looked look young and that makeup wasn't fooling anyone and looked beyond novice, and Snyder is better than that. His makeup team was perfect throughout his last 2 movies and the overall visuals of this movie looked amazing, yet they can't make a woman look 65? There's no excuse for a movie of this caliber and budget. Speaking of movie effects, their Nixon had to be the most ridiculous Richard Nixon that I've ever seen in my life. I know that Watchmen parodies some parts and even itself at times, but there's no excuse for their Nixon. He looked insulting and horrible. I mean, I'm no Nixon fan either, but how can you have such a beautiful looking movie and fuck up so bad on something so simple? I mean, he looked beyond bad and cartoonish. You would even have serious moments in the movie that are supposed to cause tension, and out comes this ridiculous looking Nixon killing the moment, and laughter isn't even his purpose. I have literally seen better Nixon impersonators on SNL, so it's bullshit for this movie to fuck him up so bad given that they did everything else with near perfection. In the end, Watchmen is a valiant attempt that fails, giving its comic book counterpart silver screen life. Instead, what it does is bring fair justice to Watchmen as a movie, but is far from what it's advertised to be. Watchmen gets an 8.5 out of 10.
The world will look up and shout, "Save us!" And I'll whisper,